Over the weekend, I planned what I was going to say at this press conference. But on the way in to Freedom House, I heard the news, and the president said that he gives his government an A grade for performance. And I must say that totally dislodged my entire plan about what I wanted to say. And so let us deal with that issue first of all. The A grade that the president gave his government for performance. I think this is a demonstration of what we have been saying about this government, that they live in La La Land, that they're increasingly growing aloof and out of touch with reality, and that it has permeated the entire government all the way to the top, all the way to the presidency. And unless they are jolted out of this fantasy world in which they live, then they're not going to seriously address any of the pressing problems that this nation faces. So, in the face of all the evidence that his government has underperformed, has failed in many areas, that has demonstrated an unbelievable level of incompetence, he gives his government the top grade. So let us examine what he himself said. The president said that investors have now been coming to this country, that they have failed to secure the levels of investment that they wanted. So the first thing is that they promised jobs, but he has failed to secure investments that create jobs. He should give himself a failing grade for that, because this was the same person and that party, it was that party that said that there is a long line of investors waiting to come to Guyana should APNU get into power. Where are they? Have they evaporated? Have they disappeared? Were they ever there in the first place? But I can tell you why people don't want to invest in Guyana. The reason they don't want to invest in Guyana is because of the policies of this government. They've scared away not only current investors, but they've scared away future investors. The people do not want, based on the signals that they're getting, to put their money at risk. You cannot do so with a capricious government that changes its policies on a daily basis, or its mind on a daily basis, and has no long-term vision for the future of this country or protection of investments. So why would you ever want to invest in a country of this nature? And so it is his government and its policies that have driven away investors. So no investors, no jobs, failing grade. They promised before the elections that they would reduce the tax burden on people. The whole idea of the reduction of VAT, the value-added tax, because they argued that the People's Progressive Party had put too high a tax burden on the people of this nation, and that they are going to reduce that burden on people. And in so doing, they would drop the rate on VAT, which they have done. But they have now increased the tax burden tremendously because, as we know, this is now old story. that the VAT was reduced from 16 to 14 and then extended. It was placed on a whole range of issues, which is creating a whole new set of problems for people. I see the challenges that people have with private education now, which would become VATable. University education would be VATable. Even the government has converted its budget agencies to taxpayer VAT agencies now. They're going to be VATable. So that's why we argued that there is no way the forecast of about $10 billion increase in collection in VAT from last year is realistic, because even from government alone, if you look at the entire capital program, excluding foreign funded one, and you add the 14% of it on that, plus on the recurrent budget, you will see that is there to procure goods and services. If you put VAT on just those two components of the budget, you're talking about $14–15 billion alone. So my prediction was that once they apply the VAT in the way that they announced it, their collections will go up beyond $25 billion a year on a base of about $35 billion last year. So VAT, the collection will go between 50 to 70% more from last year, what we collected on VAT. And that increases the burden on people. That increases the burden on people, the tax burden on people, because it's the consumers who pay VAT. And so they have failed on that. They have failed on the other tax burdens. We are aware now about the huge number of administrative burden they have put on people. And they tried to pile that on recently. We managed to hopefully stave off what would have been a catastrophe for our livestock producers and people who own pets in this country, when you could not transport. Most of you are aware of the bill that was presented to Parliament. I don't want to get sidetracked into that. But if you have an animal in Berbice, you couldn't transport the animal to Georgetown, because you can't in your own vehicle, you can't transport it for more than 50 kilometers, and then you have to have a rest stop there. And you have to, where there are no rest stop now, and you have to feed the animal and do a number of things before you continue with the journey. A whole range, registering people's pets, all sorts of nonsense. And then on the food safety bill, the burden that they would have put on small people, the people who are selling by the school side, and all of these people who've traditionally been there for decades, would now put so much burden on them. But this is all, we've seen it. We've seen the administrative burden now they've put on the business community in the last budget. Just go through the record-keeping section of what was announced in the budget, and you will see how much more administrative burden. Apart from the administrative burden, it's the fees that they've increased sometimes by 600% for services, government services. A whole range of services were listed in the budget, and then we saw what they did at the MMA. The fee increase for rice farmers, for rental and D&I fees, land rental and D&I fees for rice farmers and cattle rearers, and they've also done so at Hope Estate on the east coast of Demerara. So all of these burdens, so they have a failing grade for increasing burden on people. So a failing grade on investment and job creation, a failing grade on taxes and the easing of the tax burden. They have increased that. On crime, they have a failing grade too. The crime, as we know, is ravaging the entire country. And we have a minister who makes these unilateral pronouncements a government totally at sea in how to address this growing cancer in our society, which is snuffing out lives of many people and affecting the business community too. And you know what is the most egregious thing, what is the most worrisome thing? That there seems to be no expression of sympathy on the part of government. These events pass unnoticed, people get killed in large numbers. Some of the most horrific crimes are committed on people all across the country. And it is seen as a routine, a routine order of the day. The minister says, oh, you can't expect to have law enforcement if you don't pay taxes. Callous statements on the part of the government. No expression of sympathy, or they do not take responsibility. It's somebody else's fault. It's got to be the PPP's fault. And so half of what the president said is about the PPP's fault, after 2 years in government. So they have a failing grade on addressing the crime situation too. I can go on broken promises. I can list 30 promises that they made to young people and to many other groups. And the pensioners, a whole range of the whole sections of civil society and interest groups, and they failed on keeping their promises there. On fighting corruption, we've seen some of the most unbelievable acts of corruption in a short period of this government. Just 2 years in office, unbelievable. So just the DDL matter alone, we have never in 23 years settled any matter that would have implications of $80 billion on the Treasury. But we saw the DDL, the Rudisa, the BK matter, a whole range of settlements taking place that would probably cost the government close to maybe $80–90 billion. In under the 23 years of the PPP, if we had settlements done, negotiated between government and private investors in a tiny room to give them money from the Treasury, I doubt it would be even $2 billion in 23 years. But they've had close to $80 billion. So they're failed on that too. That's why overall this government should get a failing grade for almost everything, all of its promises. The economy is declining. There's no hope for a better future. They don't have a plan. The president complains about investment drying up, but how is investment going to come? They try to sell the oil. They try to talk up the oil industry that it would solve the problems. ExxonMobil pointed out that this is not so. It's not going to create all these jobs that they're talking about. On almost every area they failed. But